Welcome to Forbidden Desires channel. We hope you will have fun with us. Enjoy watching. You never really think it'll be you until it is, until you're the one standing there in a garage. You've walked through it 900 times, holding a flashlight in one hand and your breath in the other until you're the one who makes a choice. You can't take back that night. I wasn't looking for trouble. I was looking for a wrench. That's it, just a tool to tighten a loose cabinet hinge in the kitchen. It should have been nothing. It should have taken 6 minutes. But what happened in that garage? I will never ever forget, and not because it was magical, because it was dangerous, because it woke something in me. I had buried so deep. I forgot. It was even there. The garage was dim, as always, one bulb flickering above shadows, stretching long across the floor. The smell of oil dust and something faintly metallic hung in the air. It was quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that feels like it's watching you. Isabella wasn't home. He hadn't been home much lately, always working late. Always tired, always somewhere else, even when he was right in front of me. I had stopped expecting more, stopped dressing up, stopped trying to reach for a man who had clearly put his walls up and thrown away the key. So there I was alone in his garage, barefoot in one of his old shirts. I used to sleep in back when we still shared the same bed, and then there was a knock, not on the front door, not even on the side entrance, but right there on the garage door. Soft, hesitant, like whoever was on the other side wasn't sure if they should be there. I should have ignored it. I should have stayed quiet, but I didn't. I walked to that door and opened it without thinking, and standing there in the dim porch light was James, Isabella's friend. Our friend, someone who'd always been around, always kind, but never quite this close until now. He smiled. Sheepish, said he left a tool behind the last time he helped Isabella fix the shelves, said he didn't mean to interrupt. I told him it was fine. Of course it was fine, but something in me tightened. He stepped inside, brushing past me, and for the briefest second his arm grazed mine. It shouldn't have meant anything, but it did. You know how some moments don't feel like moments at all. They feel like a shift, like something just tilts inside you, like you've opened a door and the air on the other side is different. That's what it felt like. The garage didn't change, but I did, and so did he. We stood there talking, just small talk at first, but the space between us, it got smaller, and the things we didn't say got louder. I caught myself laughing too long at a joke that wasn't funny, noticed how he looked at me. A second too long, felt the warmth rising in my chest, spreading through limbs that hadn't felt noticed in years. And in the middle of all that, surrounded by half-used pink cans, stacked cardboard boxes, and broken promises, I forgot I was someone's wife. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. It happens in inches, in glances, in silences, and by the time you realize how far you've wandered, the line is already behind you. What happened in that garage that night? I still carry it with me, in the quiet, in the mirror. In the way I flinch when Isabella brushes against me like I'm furniture. This isn't the kind of story you tell easily, but I need to tell it because some secrets grow teeth the longer you keep them, and mine is starting to bite. If you've ever kept a secret you wish you could undo, this story might hit too close to home. So if you're still with me, stay, because I'm going to tell you everything. And once I do, you'll understand why I can never look at a garage the same way again. We were the kind of family people pointed to and said they've got it all figured out. A neat little house with shutters that matched the door, a well-trimmed lawn, 3 kids always on time for school, and a dog that greeted the neighbors with a wagging tail. And Isabella, my husband. He fit the image, quiet, reliable, always there, physically but emotionally. He'd left long before I even realized it. We'd been married for 14 years, and somewhere along the way we stopped being curious about each other, stopped asking how the other's day went, stopped laughing at things only we used to understand. He wasn't cruel, he wasn't loud, he was just absent. And sometimes that's worse. He had this way of disappearing in plain sight, sitting at the dinner table, scrolling through his phone, nodding along. When I spoke, but never actually hearing me, I'd ask him how work was and get the same answer every time. Busy, that was it, just busy. I could have vanished into thin air, and I don't think he would have noticed until his coffee mug ran out. Our 3 kids, well, they were growing up fast. They had their own worlds now, school friends, phones glued to their palms. They didn't see the space widening between their parents. Or maybe they did and just didn't know what to say. And the garage, that cluttered half-fin space with too many cobwebs and forgotten screws, became something strange to me, not just a place where tools and lawn chairs went to die, but a quiet, shadowed corner of the house where I could stand still and feel something. There was comfort in the mess, in the dust, in the crooked shelves, in the scent of wood and oil and old cardboard. Felt more honest than the rest of the house, more honest than the silence between Isabella and me. Sometimes I'd go in there and just stand, not to clean, not to find anything, just to be somewhere that didn't ask me to pretend. And then there was James. James had always been around. He and Isabella had been friends since college. He helped us move into this house, helped paint the nursery when we had our first. He'd come by now and then with his crooked smile and toolbox in hand, always fixing something. Isabella said he'd get to eventually. James noticed things. He noticed when I changed my hair, even if it was just the part. He noticed when I set the table with different napkins. He noticed when I flinched at Isabella's silence or when my laugh came out forced. He wasn't overt. He wasn't flirtatious, but there was a softness in the way he looked at me sometimes, like he was seeing more than I meant to show. He'd linger in the garage after finishing a job, wiping his hands slowly on a rag, chatting about nothing at all. Sometimes he'd ask how I was, not the polite kind of "how are you" people throw out without waiting for a real answer, but the kind that made you stop and wonder if maybe you mattered. I used to tell myself it was harmless, that I was just craving attention because I wasn't getting it from my husband, that James was just being kind, but kindness starts to feel dangerous when it finds the cracks someone else left behind. The last time he came by before that night, he fixed the light above the garage door, climbed up a ladder, replaced the old bulb and said, "There, now you won't have to fumble in the dark anymore." I remember staring at that bulb after he left, bright, steady, unblinking. I remember thinking, funny how the brightest places can still hold the darkest memories. I didn't know then what was coming, didn't know that in just a few days that very garage would become the setting. For a moment I would play back a 900 times in my head, wishing, praying that I could rewind, that I could stop myself. But life doesn't come with warning signs, and sometimes the people who see you most clearly are the ones you were never supposed to look back at. It started with a text from James. "Hey, I love my tool set in your garage, mind if I swing by tonight?" I stared at the message longer than I should have. My fingers hovered over the screen like they didn't trust me to type. And maybe they shouldn't have. It was a simple request, casual, innocent even. But something about it felt weighted, like the message had three meanings, and I wasn't sure which one he meant or which one I was reading into it. Isabella was working late again, big deadline, important meeting, whatever excuse he'd murmured that morning over a rushed cup of coffee. He hadn't even kissed me goodbye, so I typed back, "Sure, come by any time." It was raining that night, that soft, steady kind of rain that taps on windows like it's trying to be polite. The house was quiet, too quiet. The kids were at their grandmother's for the weekend, and the only sound was the ticking of the hallway clock and the occasional creak from the pipes I didn't put on. Makeup didn't change into anything different, but I did brush my hair, and I told myself it was because it had been a long day and I just wanted to feel neat. But that wasn't the whole truth. When he knocked on the garage door, I already had the side entrance unlocked. He stepped in, wiping his shoes carefully. On the mat he smelled like rain and sawdust. He smiled, that same crooked, easy smile that had always seemed harmless before. Only this time it didn't feel harmless. Felt aware. He thanked me, said he just needed a few minutes to grab his tools. I told him to take his time, and then, without thinking, I offered him coffee. We ended up standing in the garage, 3 steaming mugs in hand, surrounded by rakes, paint cans, and stacked fins full of forgotten things. The light above us, the one he'd fixed, cast a soft yellow glow over everything. It should have been awkward, but it wasn't. Felt familiar, easy. We talked about nothing really, how his week had been, the leak in his bathroom, the noise Isabella's car had been making lately. But beneath all that there was something else, something humming low and quiet just under the surface. At one point I reached to hand him his mug and our fingers touched just for a second, but it was enough to make my breath hitch, enough to make my stomach twist. He didn't pull away right away. Neither did I. We stood there, our hands brushing, our eyes meeting in a way that said far more than our words had. I laughed, a soft, nervous little thing that didn't quite sound like me. We're acting like we don't know each other. I said. He smiled again. Maybe we don't. There was a pause, a long one, the kind of silence that stretches out until it's almost unbearable, the kind that dares you to break it. The rain tapped louder now, or maybe I was just more aware of it. Every sound felt magnified, my heartbeat, the soft shifting of his boots on the concrete, the creak of the garage door. As the wind pressed against it, he set his mug down on the workbench and leaned back. Arms crossed, watching me, and I didn't know what to do with myself. I suddenly felt hyper-aware of my body, how close I was standing, how my shirt clung to my waist, how warm my face had gotten. I turned, pretending to look for something on the shelf behind me just to break the tension. But I felt him take a step closer, not too close, just enough. And in that moment, surrounded by rusted tools and childhood bikes and broken holiday decorations, I realized something. This wasn't about the tools set, not really. We both knew it. We just didn't know what to do with it yet. That garage had always felt like his face for unfinished things, and suddenly we were three more things inside it. Unresolved, unspoken, hanging in midair. He finally grabbed his toolbox and I followed him to the door. He paused before stepping out. "Thanks again," he said, voice low. I nodded, tried to smile, but my face didn't quite cooperate. He looked at me for a second, not long, but long enough. And then he left. I stood there in the doorway holding the mug. He didn't finish, staring into the night rain, feeling like something had started, something small, something dangerous. I told myself I was imagining it, that it was just attention, just warmth, just a lonely woman looking for someone to notice her. But deep down I knew we had crossed a line, even if no one had said it out loud. Yet even if nothing had happened yet, we had stepped into a space neither of us could pretend wasn't real, and the scariest part, it felt good. I kept asking myself, why was I smiling like that? Why did my heart race when he looked at me like he knew something I hadn't said out loud in years? It wasn't just the way his eyes lingered or the way he stood too close without touching me. It was the way I responded, the way something inside me lit up and stayed warm. Long after he walked out the door, I tried to brush it off, tried to tell myself I was just lonely, just flattered. But that night, I couldn't stop replaying it, the way our hands brushed, the way he looked at me like I wasn't just a wife or a mother or a woman checking off boxes. He looked at me like I was still me, still visible, still alive, and that did something to me. I laid in bed that night, staring at the ceiling while Isabella snorted beside me. And all I could think about was James, the sound of his voice, the calm in his presence, the fact that he finished his coffee slower than anyone I knew, like he actually wanted to be there. And then the guilt crept in, because what kind of woman lies next to her husband thinking about his best friend? What kind of wife lets a single moment twist her insides like that? I wanted to hate myself. I wanted to feel nothing, but I didn't. I felt everything. I felt seen for the first time in so long. It almost hurt, like waking up a limb that had gone numb years ago. There was a time Isabella used to look at me like that. Back when we couldn't keep our hands off each other, back when he'd surprise me with weekend getaways or call me from the office just to hear my voice. But time wore us down. We had our kids, our responsibilities, our routines, and somewhere between the bills and the errands and the never-ending calendar of obligations, we stopped being lovers and just became partners. Efficient, predictable, loveless, in the quietest, most civil way. I tried to tell myself I was being dramatic, that James didn't mean anything, that I was just tired, emotionally depleted, vulnerable. But the truth was I wanted to be wanted. I craved it, and the fact that it wasn't Isabella giving me that feeling. That's where the shame crept in. There's a kind of heartbreak that doesn't come from being left. Comes from staying in a house where love used to live but doesn't anymore. Where touches are brief and conversations are shallow and everything feels like a checklist. And then someone comes along who makes you feel real again. James did that. It wasn't just attraction, it was recognition. He saw the parts of me Isabella hadn't looked at in years, and that scared me more than anything else. I thought about our anniversary just a few months ago, 14 years. I remember waking up that morning just hoping that maybe this time he'd remember I had even bought a dress, made his favorite dinner, put out the wine we used to drink. When we were dating, he came home late, said he had a headache, ate 3 bites of dinner and went to bed. No card, no kiss, no us. And I sat at that table alone with a candle burning in silence, wondering if maybe it was me. Maybe I'd stopped being worth celebrating. But James that night in the garage, he remembered he noticed he saw a woman, not a fixture in a home, not a background character in her own marriage, and I couldn't stop wondering. What did that say about me? Was I weak for wanting more? Was I cruel for letting those feelings grow in a place they didn't belong? Or was I just human, a woman who'd been starving for affection and finally felt the heat of it again? I didn't know the answer, still don't. All I knew was that something had cracked open inside me, and once a crack forms, it doesn't just heal itself. It widens quietly until something breaks. I told myself I wouldn't let it go further, that it was just a moment, just a slip of emotion. I'd tuck away and forget. But deep down I think I knew somewhere in the corner of my mind. I already knew this wasn't over. I should have walked out. I should have closed the garage door and gone to bed like any decent wife would, but I didn't. I lingered, told myself I was just tidying up, that I was just clearing the workbench, stacking the empty boxes, brushing dust off the shelves, but none of it really needed doing. I just didn't want to leave, not yet. The air in the garage was thick that night, still heavy. The kind of heavy that presses against your skin like it knows what you're hiding. James came by again, said he wanted to double-check the light fixture, claimed it was flickering, said he didn't want it to short out. It wasn't flickering, not even a little, but I nodded anyway because I knew what he meant, and I think he knew I did too. He dragged the ladder over, set it right beneath the bulb, the same one he'd replaced. Days ago I stood there, watching him climb up, watching his shoulders tighten under his shirt, the way his hands moved with quiet certainty. He reached up to adjust the casing and then paused. Mind holding the ladder for me? He asked, voice low. I walked over and braced at hands on either side. I could feel the vibration of his movements through the metal, could smell the faint scent of rain on his clothes. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. When he finished, he stepped down slowly, 1 foot at a time, and as he reached the last step, he didn't move away. Not right away. We stood there inches apart, the kind of close where you can hear someone's breathing without trying, where the heat between bodies says more than words ever could. His eyes met mine, not with force, not with pressure, but with something softer, something that asked a question without speaking. I should have stepped back, should have created face, but I didn't. I held my ground, and that silence between us bloomed into something alive. A single raindrop slid down the garage door. I remember it so clearly. Curved its way toward the concrete like time had slowed down just for us, and in that moment, just that one breath of a moment, it felt like the world had forgotten. We weren't supposed to be like this. His breath was warm, his hands were callous, and when he reached up slowly, hesitantly, and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear, I didn't flinch. I let him. It was gentle, innocent enough to deny, but intimate enough to feel dangerous. I could feel the hum in my chest, the ache behind my ribs, the war between guilt and longing building with every heartbeat. I opened my mouth to say something. I don't know what. Maybe to stop him, maybe to invite him closer, and then the power cut. Everything went black. The overhead bulb went out with a soft pop, and the garage was swallowed in silence and shadow. We both froze. The sudden darkness was startling, but it wasn't frightening. It was clarifying. It was as if the universe had shut the lights off. Just so we could feel everything else louder, the rain outside, the pulse in my neck, the distance or lack of it between us. My hand brushed his in the dark, not by accident, not entirely. I felt him exhale, shaky, unsure. And still neither of us moved. There was a beata of stillness, then another, and in those breaths everything changed. No one touched anyone. No words were spoken, but we both knew this wasn't just a casual friendship anymore. This was something tipping forward, something on the edge, a line we hadn't crossed. But we're now staring at together, silently daring each other to step over. I don't know how long we stood there, long enough for my conscience to scream, long enough for my body to betray it. Eventually, I reached for my phone to use as a flashlight. The beam was small, but enough to scatter. The moment we both blinked, pulled back, smiled too politely. "I'll take a look at the breaker," he said, his voice a little rougher than before. I nodded, but the damage was already done, not to the circuit, to us. And as he stepped out into the rain to find the fuse box, I stood there in the dark, breathing hard and shaking inside because I knew something had sparked that couldn't be shut off again. No matter how hard I tried, and something told me this wasn't the last night he'd come by. I don't remember who moved first. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was him. Maybe it was the loneliness pulling us both forward like a tide. Neither of us could fight. After the power cut, the garage felt even smaller. The rain had picked up heavier, now a steady rhythm against the roof and the pavement outside. The only light came from my phone, casting long, shaky shadows against the walls. James stood near the door, water dripping from his hair, his shirt damp from the mist. He was supposed to flip the breaker and leave. That's what should have happened, but he didn't leave and I didn't tell him to. Instead, he came back inside, closed the door softly behind him, and for a moment we just stood there, me in that same old shirt, him soaked and silent, and the weight between us unbearable. I held the phone between us, the light flickering slightly from my trembling hand. He looked at me, really looked, and I saw it in his eyes, a mirror of everything I was feeling: longing, fear, regret before the act had even happened. I didn't plan it, didn't think about it, but my hand reached out and so did his. It was quiet, no music, no words, just the rain and our breathing. And that 1 second, that one stupid second where I leaned in and he didn't stop me. Our lips met, soft, slow, like we were both afraid the moment might disappear if we moved too fast. It wasn't desperate. It wasn't rough. It was gentle, heartbreaking, 3 people who had held everything in for too long, finally letting go just a little. My hand found his shoulder, has found the curve of my back. Nothing more, nothing below that, just one kiss. But it was enough to cross a line, enough to stain everything that came before and everything that would come after. And when we pulled apart, barely breathing, barely existing, we didn't speak. We didn't apologize, because what do you say after that? I felt the heat rush to my cheeks, not from desire but from shame, a shame that hit so fast, so violently. It almost made me dizzy. I turned away, pressed my hands to my face. My heart was pounding in my throat, and I remember thinking, can't undo this. It didn't go further. It didn't have to. That kiss changed everything. It wasn't the kind of kiss you forget. It was the kind you carry with you, the kind that rewrites who you are in the quietest, cruelest way. I was no longer just a wife. No longer just a woman holding on. I was someone who let the silence between her and her husband be filled by someone else, and then we both heard it: a car, the crunch of tires against the wet gravel, headlights flooding the front window, the low hum of an engine pulling into the driveway. Isabella was home, time stopped, James froze, his eyes locked on mine. I fumbled with my phone, turned the flashlight off. My entire body went cold. Panic hit me like a wave. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. James moved first. This time he grabbed his toolbox fast and quiet and whispered something I couldn't even register. I nodded. I think I nodded. I was too numb to know for sure. He slipped out the side door and into the darkness, just as Isabella's car door opened. I stood there in the garage alone again, the rain still falling, my heart still racing and my lips still tingling from a kiss I shouldn't have let happen. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand as if that could erase it. I remember walking back inside like a ghost, smiling at Isabella like nothing was wrong, like I hadn't just kissed his best friend 6 minutes before. He barely looked at me, tossed his keys on the counter, said something about a long day, and I stood there nodding, heart hollow. He didn't know. Course he didn't, but I did, and from that moment on, nothing between us would ever feel clean again. James pulled away like I burned him, his eyes wide, his breath shallow and mine gone, like I had swallowed the air and it refused to stay inside me. I wiped my mouth with shaking hands, not because there was anything to wipe away, but because something in me needed to believe I could erase what had just happened. He didn't say a word, just looked at me like he didn't recognize the woman standing in front of him anymore, like maybe he was just realizing we'd done something neither of us could take back, and then he left quickly. No goodbye, no explanation. Just the sound of his boots on the wet pavement fading into the night. We never spoke of it again. Not a single word, not in person, not in passing, not even in a text, but the silence between us. After that, it was deafening. He stopped coming around. No more quick visits, no more offers to fix things around the house. No more casual checking with that half-mile that used to make me feel like maybe I still mattered. And Isabella didn't suspect anything he didn't know, but he noticed me for the first time in a long time. He noticed I was quieter, more distant, more distracted. He started asking me if I was Oka, which felt like a cruel joke considering how long I'd waited to hear those words. And now when they finally came, they felt too late, too misplaced. I told him I was just tired. That work was stressful, that maybe I was catching something. He nodded, accepting it the way he accepted everything at face value, never digging deeper. Never wondering if there was something beneath the surface worth understanding. But something had shifted in me, and I knew he could sense it. He started coming home earlier, started eating dinner with me again, even reached for my hand once on the couch, and I let him. I held his hand and smiled and told myself it meant something, that maybe we were finding our way back. But inside I was unraveling because I'd broken something, not just trust, not just vows, something inside myself. There was this ache, deep and low and constant like grief, but for a version of me I couldn't get back to. I couldn't stop thinking about that night, the way James had looked at me in the dark, the warmth of his lips, the sting of his absence. Afterward, I wanted to hate him for leaving me to carry it alone. But how could I blame him? When I was the one who opened the door. I started avoiding the garage, couldn't even walk past it without feeling my stomach twist. It used to be my escape, my quiet space. Now it was haunted. Every corner reminded me, the shelf he leaned on, the bulb he fixed, the door he walked out of, and Isabella, he never asked. Not once. He never noticed that I flinched when he touched me, never noticed that I stopped kissing him fully, that my eyes didn't meet his the way they used to. Maybe he didn't want to know. Maybe deep down he already did, so I carried it alone. I smiled when I had to laugh. When it was expected, did the dishes folded? The laundry packed lunches like nothing had changed, but everything had, because once you've crossed that line, even with just a kiss, you can't uncross it. You can't unfeel it. You can't unknown the version of yourself you became in that moment, and the worst part, you don't get to hate anyone but yourself. I think about that night more than I should, not because of what happened, but because of what almost did. Sometimes plays in my mind like a film stuck on a loop, the kiss, the heat, the quiet, the door creaking open as Isabella pulled into the driveway like life reached out and yanked us back just before we stepped too far. But if I'm being honest, if I peel away all the layers of guilt and pretend, I wonder, would I have stopped? Would he have if Isabella hadn't come home when he did? What would have happened? That question doesn't go away, doesn't fade with time, just settles in quiet. Heavy. Always there. I ask myself, was a kiss really betrayal? I didn't sleep with him, we didn't undress each other. We didn't cross every line. But then again, sometimes it's the smaller lines that leave the deepest cracks. 'Cause I didn't kiss James by accident. I chose to lean in. I let it happen, and that choice, it says more than I want to admit. Was I looking for affection, or was I just trying to run from a life that felt too quiet, from a marriage that had stopped seeing me, from a version of myself that was tired of feeling like furniture in her own home? There's this deep ache in wanting something that isn't yours, something you don't even know if you truly want if it was yours. I didn't want James. Not fully. What I wanted was to feel again, to be looked at like I mattered, to be touched like I was still something soft, still something alive. That night in the garage, I wasn't thinking about Isabella. I wasn't thinking about vows or years or consequences. I was thinking about being seen and how good it felt and how sad that was sometimes. I still see James at the grocery store near the produce aisle once by the parking lot as I loaded groceries into the trunk. We pretend like we're just three people who happen to know each other. Like nothing ever happened between us, like my lips don't remember his, but I can feel it even if he doesn't look at me. I can feel the garage between us. It sits in the air, thick and invisible. It lives in the silence between his steps and mine, and in that moment, just those few seconds before we pass each other. I wonder if he thinks about it too, if he remembers the rain, the light, the kiss that changed everything. And I wonder if he carries it like I do, or if he found a way to let it go because I haven't, not fully, maybe not at all. Have you ever been seen by someone and it changed how you saw yourself, not touched, not pursued, just seen like they looked past the clothes, past the years, past the masks you didn't even know you were wearing and saw you that night in the garage? I didn't just kiss someone I shouldn't have. I stepped outside of the woman I thought I was, and in that moment I became someone else. Not better, not worse, just someone I hadn't met before. I keep asking myself, was I wrong for not stopping him? Was I wrong for leaning in when I should have turned away, for allowing a moment that felt good to rewrite years of vows whispered on an altar? Or was I just a woman, a tired, unseen, aching woman trying to be remembered in a life that had slowly forgotten her? I don't know. Maybe both can be true. Maybe that's the part. No one talks about the gray between wrong and survival. So I want to ask you, watching this, hearing every word I've said, was this betrayal, or was it just human vulnerability exposed? Was it weakness, or was it the cost of being emotionally starved for too long? Tell me in the comments. Tell me the truth, because I don't think I even know mine anymore. And if these stories move you, if they break something open in you or stitch something back together, then like this video, subscribe to Shocking Infidelity Saga, because here we don't just tell stories, we unravel the human heart. Narrator, haunting poetic loneliness doesn't always knock loudly. Sometimes it slips in while you're reaching for something as simple as a tool, a wrench, a box of screws, a piece of yourself. And when you finally notice it, it's already sitting next to you, breathing, watching, waiting for you to acknowledge that it's been there all along. Truth is, most affairs don't start with passion. They start with neglect, with silence, with one too many nights, feeling like you sleep beside a stranger. Be careful with the silences in your marriage, because sometimes it's not the noise that breaks us. It's what we don't say that leaves the deepest why story ends here. If you feel that this story is meaningful and brings useful lessons, please like and subscribe to the channel to support me. Thanks for listening, and see you in the next videos.